Ava had always been a simple maid at the palace. She wasn't royalty. She wasn't important, but she worked hard, sweeping floors, cleaning dishes, and preparing meals for the royal family. She was one of the few humans in the palace, brought here from Earth as part of a diplomatic agreement. The palace itself was a wonder, a massive structure that towered against the clear blue sky, surrounded by strange alien gardens filled with plants that glowed in the dark. The walls were covered in shimmering crystals that seemed to pulse with a soft light, and the air always smelled faintly of something sweet, like flowers from another world. Ava didn't mind the strange beauty of the place. It had become her home. She didn't ask for much, just a safe place to work and make a living. But today something was different. There was tension in the air, a heavy feeling that Ava couldn't quite explain. The palace had been buzzing all morning. The royal court was in an uproar. Prince Zaroth, the young heir to the throne, had returned from a long journey, bringing with him his most prized companion, the Dragon of Calthor. It was a creature of legend, one of the last of its kind, and it was said to bond with the royal family through a deep, ancient connection. Zaroth's bond with the dragon was sacred, but today even the dragon seemed uneasy. Ava had heard whispers in the halls. The dragon had been acting strangely ever since Zaroth's return. It wasn't like the creature to growl at anyone, to snap its massive jaws at the servants, but something about the prince's arrival had made the dragon unpredictable. As she worked in the kitchens, Ava couldn't help but overhear snippets of conversation between the royal servants. The dragon is unsettled. Maybe it senses something dangerous. Another voice replied, maybe it's just the prince's energy. He's always been unpredictable. But Ava paid little attention to these rumors. She had her own work to do. Yet something gnawed at her. Her usual routine had become so normal to her, until now. It was when she was cleaning near the royal gardens that she felt it. A sudden coldness in the air. The hairs on her arms stood up. She looked up, and there, standing on the edge of the garden, was the dragon. It was massive, with dark, gleaming scales that shimmered like liquid silver in the sunlight. Its eyes, glowing like two bright orbs, were locked on Ava. Her heart skipped a beat. The dragon was watching her, and it wasn't like the usual calm way it observed the palace. There was something more intense about its gaze. Before she could react, the creature lunged. It was so fast Ava didn't even have time to scream. The dragon's mouth opened wide, and she felt a sharp pain on her arm as the creature's teeth sank into her flesh. She gasped in shock, unable to move as the dragon held her in place. Panic spread throughout the palace as the servants rushed in. But no one dared to approach the creature. The dragon was an ancient being, immensely powerful, and even Zaroth, its bondmate, would never risk getting too close when the dragon was agitated. Ava. Zaroth's voice cut through the panic. He was running toward her now, his expression unreadable, his usual calm demeanor replaced with concern. In one swift motion, he reached out and pulled the dragon away from her. Enough, he commanded, his voice firm but gentle. The dragon hissed, but Zaroth was unshaken. He held the creature back with a strength that Ava had never seen in him before. The pain on Ava's arm was intense, and she felt her knees weaken. The room spun, but she refused to fall. She couldn't. Not with everyone watching. Someone get a healer, Zaroth shouted. His eyes never left Ava, as if trying to understand why the dragon had bitten her in the first place. But it wasn't just the pain in her arm that worried Ava. No, something else was happening. As she looked down at the wound, she saw something strange. Her blood was glowing, not just faintly, but brightly, glowing in hues of blue and purple, like the very energy of the planet was flowing through her. She gasped and staggered back, her hand instinctively reaching for the wound. The energy coming from her blood was unlike anything she had ever felt. It was almost alive. Zaroth's eyes widened when he saw it. He had always known his dragon was capable of many things, but he had never seen it do anything like this before. The dragon growled again, its head snapping toward Ava with a mix of curiosity and what could only be described as recognition. What is happening? Ava whispered to herself, her voice shaky. What's going on with me? Zaroth hesitated for a moment, then quickly placed his hand on her shoulder. You must come with me, he said, his voice low but urgent. This is something we have to understand. It's not just the dragon. Something else is happening. Before Ava could respond, a group of palace healers arrived, rushing to her side. But Zaroth was insistent. He led her away from the scene, his mind racing with thoughts he couldn't yet express. Why had the dragon chosen her? Why had it bitten her? The healers were silent as they worked, their strange alien instruments scanning her body for any signs of damage. But Ava felt no pain, aside from the bite wound itself. Instead, she felt a strange warmth spreading through her veins as if something deep inside her was awakening. The energy from her blood seemed to grow stronger with every passing second. "You're lucky," one of the healers said after a long pause, his voice heavy with confusion. "The wound is healing itself, but there's something strange about your blood. It's not like anything we've seen before." Zaroth glanced at the healer, his eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" "The energy in her blood. It's not human," the healer replied. "It's something else." Zaroth's heart raced. Could it be? Could Ava somehow be more than just a human maid? Was this connected to the ancient legend of the dragon and the royal bloodline? He turned to Ava, his mind working fast. "We need to get you to a safe place. There's much more at play here than you realize." As they walked through the halls, Ava's thoughts were a blur. Nothing made sense. Why her? Why now? She had never wanted anything more than to live her life quietly. But now it seemed her fate was tied to something far larger, something far more dangerous. And deep inside, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The days following the dragon's bite felt like a blur for Ava. The palace, once a place of routine and calm, now felt strange, unpredictable, as though she were walking through a dream. Her wound had healed quickly, faster than any injury she'd ever had. The pain from the dragon's bite had faded within hours, but the strange feeling that had come with it had only grown. Her blood, still faintly glowing, seemed to pulse with a life of its own. It wasn't like anything she had ever experienced. Even the air around her felt different, charged with something she couldn't name. The palace healers were baffled. They had never seen anything like it before. Despite their best efforts, they couldn't explain why her blood was glowing, why her body was reacting so strangely to the dragon's bite. No one could. Zaroth, too, seemed uncertain. He had kept his distance for a while, only visiting her occasionally, his mind clearly occupied with other matters. But now he was more concerned than ever. The bond between him and his dragon was something he had always known, but the connection between Ava and the dragon, that was new and strange. One evening, after the sun had set and the palace gardens were bathed in the soft glow of alien light, Zaroth found Ava sitting alone near the fountain. The quiet sound of water trickling from the stone basin was the only noise in the stillness. "Ava," Zaroth called gently, his voice breaking the silence. Ava looked up, startled. She hadn't heard him approach. Her eyes widened for a moment, then softened. "Prince Zaroth," she said quietly, standing up from her seat. "I didn't expect to see you." Zaroth took a step closer. His usual calm expression was replaced by something more worried. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "I know the healers haven't found much, but how do you feel?" Ava thought for a moment before answering. "Different," she said slowly, her voice uncertain. "It's like my body is changing, but I don't know why. I don't know what's happening to me." Zaroth nodded, his gaze never leaving her face. "It's the dragon," he said. "I know you feel it. The connection between you and it's not like anything I've seen before. It's stronger." Ava felt a chill run down her spine. She didn't want to believe it, but the more she thought about it, the more she realized it was true. She did feel something pulling her toward the dragon, something she couldn't ignore. It was like an invisible thread connecting her to the creature, to Zaroth, to the entire kingdom. But it was more than just a pull. It was as if a part of her deep inside was awakening, something old and powerful. "I don't understand," Ava said softly, shaking her head. "I don't know what it wants from me. The dragon? It feels like it's calling me." Zaroth's expression darkened. He had feared this. The ancient bond between dragons and their riders was never meant to be broken. But now it seemed something else was at play, a new connection, one that no one could explain. And Ava, the human maid, had become the key. "We need to understand this," Zaroth said firmly. "We can't ignore what's happening. There's more to it than just the dragon. There's something else." Ava looked at him, her brow furrowing. "What do you mean?" Zaroth hesitated for a moment, then stepped closer to her. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "I think the dragon, it's chosen you. Ava took a step back, her mind racing. Chosen me. But I'm just a maid. I'm not special. Xerath shook his head. No, Ava, you are special. The dragon doesn't choose just anyone. It chooses those who have something more, a connection to the ancient powers that have long been forgotten. Ava's heart raced in her chest. This couldn't be true. She was just a simple woman from Earth, far away from this alien world. She didn't have any special powers. She didn't have any ancient connection to a dragon. She was just Ava. But deep down she knew that something had changed inside her. The dragon's bite had awakened something she couldn't explain. And that something was growing stronger with each passing day. Over the next few days, Ava began to notice more strange changes. Her senses seemed sharper. She could hear the soft rustle of leaves from the garden even when she was inside the palace. The colors of the flowers outside appeared brighter, more vivid. And her strength, though she was still recovering from the bite, seemed to be growing. She could lift heavier objects, move faster with ease. It was as if her body was becoming something else entirely. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that Xerath was right. The dragon had chosen her. She could feel its presence in her mind like a whisper in the back of her thoughts. It was calling her, pulling her toward it, toward something greater. But what did this mean? What was she supposed to do with this power, with this connection? She didn't know how to control it, how to understand it. Every time she tried, the power seemed to slip further out of her reach, like trying to hold water in her hands. One evening, as Ava stood by the window, watching the stars twinkle in the sky, she heard a voice, one she didn't expect to hear. Ava, the voice said. It was soft, but it carried with it the weight of an ancient being. She spun around, her heart skipping a beat. Who's there? She called, her voice trembling. At first she saw nothing. But then the shadows in the corner of the room began to shift. From the darkness the dragon appeared, its massive form stepping into the moonlight. Its glowing eyes locked onto hers, and she felt that familiar pull in her chest. The dragon didn't speak with words. Instead, Ava felt a surge of emotions, an ancient power that pulsed through her, through the air, through everything. It was as though the creature was showing her its memories, its past, its history. She saw visions of great battles, of worlds falling and rising, of dragons and their riders fighting side by side. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, the connection stopped. Ava stumbled back, her heart racing in her chest. The dragon was gone, but the power remained. It lingered in her veins, pulsing, growing. Xerath found her standing there, her face pale, her body trembling. Ava, he said softly. What happened? Ava couldn't speak. She didn't know how to explain what she had just felt, what she had just experienced. All she knew was that she was no longer just a maid. She wasn't just human anymore. And whatever was happening to her, it wasn't over yet. The days following the strange connection with the dragon were filled with uncertainty. Ava spent most of her time in her private chambers trying to understand what had happened to her. Her thoughts were clouded with the dragon's presence, and she often found herself staring at the sky, wondering if it was calling to her again. The palace was buzzing with rumors. Whispers echoed through the halls, and even the servants seemed to speak in hushed tones when they thought she wasn't listening. Everyone knew something had changed with Ava, but no one could explain why. The healers had stopped coming to her, their once confident faces now filled with doubt. They could no longer offer any answers. Ava's blood still glowed faintly, and her strength had increased in ways that made her feel both amazed and frightened. But she couldn't stop the strange pull that tugged at her heart. The dragon's presence was always there, like a shadow lingering just out of reach. Xerath visited her often, but his visits were different now. There was a distance between them, an unspoken tension that neither of them could ignore. He was the prince, the heir to the throne, and she wasn't sure what she was anymore. A maid, a weapon, a chosen one? There were too many questions, and every answer only led to more confusion. One evening, as Ava stood by the window watching the sun dip below the horizon, Xerath approached her once again. His usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by something that looked like worry. Ava, he began, his voice soft but firm. There's something I need to tell you. Ava turned to face him, her heart pounding. What is it? The situation has changed, Xerath said, stepping closer. The palace is no longer safe. The rumors about you, about the dragon, they've spread far beyond these walls. People are talking, And not just here in the palace. Ava frowned, unsure of what he meant. What do you mean? Who is talking about me? Zaroth hesitated for a moment before speaking again. There's a rebellion brewing in the outer provinces. People are starting to believe that you are a sign of something greater. Some think you're the key to taking the throne from my family. Ava felt a chill run down her spine. What do they want with me? They want to use you, Zaroth replied. They think that if they control you, they can control the dragon's power. And with it, they believe they can overthrow the royal family. Ava shook her head in disbelief. But I don't even understand what's happening to me. I'm just a maid. Zaroth's gaze softened. You're more than that, Ava. The dragon's bond with you is stronger than anything I've ever felt. It's not just about you. It's about the power you've inherited. The power? Ava repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. What power? Zaroth looked at her seriously. The dragon's power. It's ancient and it's tied to the bloodlines of the rulers of this kingdom. But it's not just any bloodline. It's the bloodline of those who were chosen by the dragons long ago. And now it seems that bond has shifted. To you? Ava felt a wave of fear and confusion wash over her. She had no idea what Zaroth was talking about. She had never asked for any of this. She didn't want to be part of some ancient prophecy or rebellion. She just wanted to go back to her simple life. I don't want any of this, she said, her voice shaky. I know, Zaroth said, his voice softening. But it's happening, Ava, whether you want it or not. Just then there was a loud knock on the door interrupting their conversation. Ava's heart skipped a beat as the door opened, revealing one of the palace guards. Prince Zaroth, the guard said, bowing respectfully. There's a messenger from the outer provinces. He demands an audience with you. Zaroth's expression hardened. He gave Ava one last lingering glance before turning to the guard. Tell him to wait in the hall. I'll be there shortly. As the guard left, Zaroth turned back to Ava. This is why I came to find you. The rebellion is growing stronger. We need to act before things get worse. Ava nodded, though she didn't feel any better. She couldn't even understand the words Zaroth was saying, let alone what they meant for her future. But the tension in the air was undeniable. Something was happening, and Ava was at the center of it all. Zaroth left to meet with the messenger, but Ava couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. She paced the room, her thoughts racing. The dragon was out there somewhere calling to her. She could feel its presence, a constant tug in the back of her mind. As the evening wore on, Ava grew more restless. She had to do something. She couldn't just sit back and wait for things to happen. But what could she do? She didn't know how to control the power she felt inside her. She didn't even know if she wanted to control it. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that she didn't have a choice. She had been thrust into this situation, and now she had to find a way out of it. If the rebellion was coming, and if she was the key to stopping them, she had to be ready. She couldn't let anyone use her for their own gain. Later that night, Zaroth returned to her chambers. His expression was grim, his eyes filled with the weight of the news he had just received. The rebellion is moving faster than we thought, Zaroth said. They've already begun to rally the people, and they're not just after the throne. They're after the dragon's power, too. If we don't act soon, we'll lose everything. Ava felt her heart pound in her chest. What do you need me to do? Zaroth looked at her, his gaze piercing. I don't know, but you need to be prepared. The dragon's bond with you? It could be the only thing that saves us. You need to figure out how to control it, Ava. Ava stared at him, her mind swirling with confusion and fear. She didn't have any answers. She didn't have any power. But as she looked into Zaroth's eyes, she saw something there, a kind of hope. A hope that maybe, just maybe, she could find a way to stop the rebellion and protect the kingdom, but she had no idea where to start. Ava had never imagined that her life could change so drastically. Just a few weeks ago, she had been a quiet maid, going about her duties in the Grand Palace. Now she was at the center of a dangerous, growing conflict, one that she didn't fully understand. The dragon's power, the rebellion, Zaroth's cryptic words, it was all too much to grasp. She spent her days pacing her chambers, lost in thought. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw flashes of the dragon, its glowing eyes burning into her soul. The bond between them was undeniable now. It wasn't just a connection, it was something deep and ancient. And with that bond, she knew she was becoming something else, someone else. Zaroth had asked her to prepare for the worst, to be ready to control the power she had inherited. But Ava didn't even know where to begin. She wasn't a warrior. She wasn't a leader. She was a simple human who had somehow been pulled into a story much bigger than her. One evening, after a long day of worrying, she went to the palace gardens to clear her mind. The air was cool and the stars above twinkled like diamonds against the dark sky. She loved these quiet moments. The calm of the garden gave her a sense of peace, something she desperately needed. As she walked through the garden's winding paths, Ava's thoughts were interrupted by a soft, familiar voice. Ava. She turned to see Zeroth standing by the fountain, his figure outlined by the soft light from the moon. He looked tired, as though the weight of the kingdom's troubles was heavy on his shoulders. But his eyes softened when they met hers. "You're out here again," he said quietly, walking over to her. "I thought you might be." Ava smiled weakly. "It's the only place I feel like I can think clearly." Zeroth nodded, understanding. They stood in silence for a moment, the quiet only broken by the sound of water flowing in the fountain. "I've been thinking," Zeroth finally said, breaking the silence. "I didn't tell you everything. About the dragon, about the bloodlines." Ava's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "What's more to the story?" Zeroth hesitated for a moment before answering. "There are things about my family's history that I never understood, things that I'm only now starting to piece together." He turned to face her fully, his eyes serious. "The royal family has always been tied to the dragons, but it's not just a simple bond. The dragons choose their riders based on a much older prophecy. Long ago, the dragons were not merely protectors. They were sent by an even greater force, one that sought to maintain balance in the galaxy. The royal family of Kalthor was meant to protect that balance, but it came with a cost. Each generation a rider would bond with the dragon, but the power would always grow stronger until it eventually began to cause destruction." Ava's mind was spinning. This was more than she had ever imagined. "So, what does this mean for me?" "It means," Zeroth said carefully, "that you were never meant to be part of this. But the bond between you and the dragon has changed the course of history. The power you've inherited is not just mine to control, it's tied to both our destinies." Ava felt a shiver run through her. Her blood still tingled with the memory of the dragon's bite, and now she understood that the power she had been feeling wasn't just a gift. It was something much darker. Zeroth took a deep breath. "There's more. My family has been hiding something we've always known but never spoken of. The dragons weren't just protectors. They were keepers of the universe's most ancient and dangerous power. The royal bloodline was meant to act as the guardians of that power. But over time, my ancestors began to lose control of it. The bloodline was becoming too weak to keep the dragons from destroying everything. The bond was supposed to be broken before it got out of hand." Ava's voice trembled. "So the dragon and I, this bond, it was never supposed to happen?" Zeroth nodded grimly. "No, but it did. And now we have to deal with the consequences." Ava felt overwhelmed. The weight of the situation was crushing her. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was part of a prophecy she didn't understand, and the fate of the entire kingdom, and perhaps more, was tied to her. But what could she do? She wasn't prepared for any of this. Zeroth continued, his voice softer now. "The rebellion is not just about the throne. It's about controlling the dragon's power. The people who are leading the rebellion know that whoever controls the dragon controls the kingdom and the galaxy. They believe that if they can harness its power, they can destroy the royal bloodline and rebuild the galaxy in their image." Ava took a step back, feeling a rush of fear. "How do we stop them? How do we stop this?" "We don't have much time," Zeroth said, his tone urgent. "We need to act before the rebellion grows too strong. If they manage to take control of the dragon, we could lose everything. The only way to stop them is for you to learn how to control the power you've inherited. The dragon has chosen you, but it won't be enough to simply rely on it. You have to become part of it." "But how?" Ava whispered. "How can I do that?" Zeroth looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. "I don't know, but we need to find out. We need to go to the Temple of the Dragons. There we might find answers." Ava felt a surge of determination. The thought of sitting back and waiting for someone else to fix things was no longer an option. She had to take control of her own destiny, no matter how terrifying that might be. Zeroth reached out, his hand hovering near her shoulder. "Are you ready?" Ava nodded, her heart racing. "I have to be." They turned and walked out of the garden together. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Ava was no longer just a passive observer in this conflict. She was part of it, and if she wanted to save the kingdom and herself, she would have to learn to control the power that was now part of her. Ava stood at the edge of the great cliff, the wind whipping through her hair, her eyes fixed on the distant horizon. The world felt so vast now, so full of possibilities, and yet everything was uncertain. Behind her, the ancient temple loomed, a massive structure made of stone etched with strange symbols that glowed faintly in the twilight. It had taken days to get here, to reach the heart of the dragon's history, the place where the bond between the dragons and the royal family had begun. Xerath stood beside her, his face a mixture of determination and worry. His presence was comforting, but even his calm demeanor couldn't hide the tension that had grown between them. The rebellion was closing in and time was running out. They had come to the temple seeking answers, but Ava wasn't sure what she was supposed to find, or if she was ready to face it. "This is it," Xerath said, his voice low. "This temple holds the key to understanding the dragon's power, to understanding your power." Ava nodded, but her heart was heavy. The weight of everything that had happened, everything that could happen, was pressing down on her. She wasn't sure if she was ready. She wasn't sure if she could handle whatever secret this temple held, but she had no choice. The rebellion was growing stronger by the day, and with it the dragon's bond with her was becoming harder to control. If she didn't find a way to understand it, the kingdom, and perhaps the entire galaxy, would fall into chaos. "I'm ready," she said, though her voice trembled slightly. "I have to be." Together they walked into the temple, stepping through the great stone doorway. The inside was cool and dark, filled with the scent of ancient stone and dust. A series of statues lined the walls, each one depicting a dragon in various poses, their eyes seeming to follow Ava as she moved deeper into the temple. At the far end of the hall, a massive altar stood, bathed in soft, ethereal light. The air around it seemed charged with energy, as though it was waiting for something, or someone to arrive. "This is where the first bond between the royal family and the dragons was made," Xerath explained quietly, his voice echoing in the vast space. "It's said that the dragon chooses its rider here in this very chamber. The bond is formed in the heart of the dragon's power." Ava swallowed hard, feeling the weight of those words. The air around her felt thick with energy, almost like it was vibrating with anticipation. She stepped forward, her breath coming faster as she approached the altar. The dragon's presence was stronger here. She could feel it, like a pulse in the back of her mind, tugging at her very soul. She closed her eyes, focusing on the connection she had felt since the day it bit her. The energy surged through her, overwhelming her senses. Images of ancient battles, of dragons soaring through the sky, filled her mind. She saw the faces of past rulers, some kind, some cruel, all bound to their dragons in ways she could never fully understand. But then, something else began to emerge. A figure, not a dragon, but a person. A woman standing tall beside a dragon. Her eyes were fierce, her expression determined. She was powerful, in a way that made Ava's heart race. The image faded as quickly as it had come, leaving Ava gasping for air. Her hand shot out to steady herself on the altar. "Ava," Xerath's voice cut through the haze. "What happened?" Ava blinked, trying to make sense of the vision. "I saw something," she said, her voice shaky. "A woman, she was like me, but more. She was connected to the dragon like I am." Xerath stepped closer, his eyes narrowing in thought. "That sounds like the first chosen rider, the one who formed the bond with the dragons. But her story was lost to history. No one knows what happened to her." Ava looked at him, feeling a flicker of hope. "Do you think I'm supposed to be like her? Am I supposed to become the dragon's rider in the way she did?" Xerath's gaze softened, and for a moment he seemed to hesitate. "I don't know, Ava, but it seems that you're meant for something greater than either of us understands. The power inside you, it's growing. If you're going to control it, you need to understand it, and that means embracing it." Ava's heart beat louder in her chest. She could feel the weight of his words pressing down on her. The dragon was more than a weapon, it was a force of nature, and she was connected to it. But did she have the strength to control it? To use it without destroying herself, or worse, everyone around her? Before she could respond, a sudden, distant roar shook the temple, followed by the sound of footsteps approaching. Ava's heart skipped a beat. The rebellion had found them. Xerath's eyes widened in alarm. "They're here." The ground beneath their feet trembled as the roar of the dragon echoed again, louder this time, as if calling for Ava. The connection was undeniable now. She could feel it deep within her. The dragon was waiting for her. "Zeroth," Ava said, her voice firm. "I don't know if I'm ready, but I don't have a choice, do I?" Zeroth looked at her, his face filled with a mix of pride and fear. "No, you don't, but you're stronger than you think." Ava took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she reached out for the power that was calling to her. She could feel the dragon's energy flowing through her, surrounding her, merging with her own. The pain from the transformation was sharp, but she forced herself to push through it. She could not afford to hesitate. The doors of the temple burst open and figures cloaked in shadows stormed in. Rebels, led by a man with a burning rage in his eyes. They had come for the dragon's power for Ava. But Ava was no longer afraid. She was not the same person who had arrived at the temple days ago. She had learned to embrace the power within her, to accept the bond she had with the dragon. She could feel its strength coursing through her, guiding her. As the rebels advanced, Ava raised her hand. A surge of energy pulsed from her fingertips, pushing them back. The dragon's roar filled the air, and Ava felt the bond grow stronger, her senses sharpening. The dragon was with her, and she was with it. The leader of the rebels, a man with fiery eyes, shouted in disbelief. "You think you can stop us with this power? You're just a human." Ava's eyes narrowed, her voice steady as she spoke. "I'm more than human now." With a wave of her hand, the energy surrounding her flared, knocking the rebels off their feet. The temple shook, the walls glowing brighter as the power inside her exploded, sending shockwaves through the air. The rebels scattered, their plans crumbling before Ava's newfound strength. She stood there breathing heavily, her body still vibrating with the energy she had just unleashed. Zeroth stepped forward, his eyes filled with awe. "Ava, you did it. You've controlled the power." Ava looked at him, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. The rebellion had been stopped, but there was still much more to face. The future was uncertain, but Ava had learned one thing. She was no longer just a bystander. She had the power to shape her own fate and the fate of the galaxy.